Hey there, I'm Kevin Downey, and I run an agency called Kevin M. Downey, where we help B2B companies with their sales and marketing efforts. You can visit our website at kevinmdowney.com. Okay, today's video, how to build a scalable business development to sales system or marketing to sales system for your B2B company from scratch. So we're not, in this case, in this scenario, we are not talking about established companies that have pieces already in place, that have sales teams and business development teams already in place. We're more thinking about this in startups and micro businesses. How do you go about building this kind of thing from scratch, right? So you're a blank slate, if you will. Now, some are funded, and so we'll dig into that a little bit. But for the most part, we're thinking about this from, again, a smaller business startup standpoint. May have some decent capitalization, might be funded, but at the end of the day, we're thinking about it from scratch, and we got to build this in the most economical way possible. Okay, so this is a picture of our assessment product, just to give you an example. This is what we use to identify business development and sales candidates and qualify them. It is an absolutely phenomenal product called Traits. It's what we use for all recruiting in the United States. Okay, all right, so what do we do step by step? So the first thing that you have to think about if you're a business owner or principal in a startup or a company that's just still raw in B2B and you're starting to build or have, getting going, right? First thing you've got to do is establish a marketing budget. So that includes any sales salaries for reps you're going to hire apart from one of you as a principal. So usually in startup organizations, I want to see one of the principals be the primary salesperson in the organization to start. It doesn't mean you're doing business development or lead generation necessarily, but it does mean that you're doing scheduled calls, sales calls to get yourself off the ground, right? So now, apart from you doing sales, what do we need to have? What does that budget look like that you can justify for marketing? And that includes, let's say, a BDR, SDR person, maybe your first hire to help move leads to you and scheduled calls to you, right? So you've got to establish a budget. You've got to have some kind of number to work with, all right? Number two, when we look at things, we have to look at prospect list size, which is what dictates the recommended medium or way that you're going to do cold outreach, whether you do it with automated email, high-powered automated email, not something with just your CRM and a couple email boxes. I'm talking high-powered, 50,000 a month or more. Are you doing that, or are we doing manualized outreach with, say, a BDR, for example, when you get started? Dedicated rep is going to do nothing but find decision makers, gather intel, identify pain point, low-hanging fruit, move them to scheduled calls for you, that kind of thing. The prospect list is going to dictate the recommended medium or way that you start your business development and your marketing as a company, okay? That also then is going to depend upon budget, right? So that dictates everything. Now, if we have enough prospects to go after, say 10, 15, 20,000 or more, usually I'd say 15 or 20,000 or more, then I'm going to recommend high-powered email, 50,000 a month, that kind of model to be able to drive yourself inbound leads. And if you put an SDR on it, they follow up with leads, move them to calls with you and that kind of stuff. And you as being the initial sales rep, say in the organization. That's if we have enough list size, right? If not, then we need to find someone to do that cold outreach to drive. Let's say you have a much narrower list or a niche list, a few thousand, 5,000. Now we're going to look at a rep to do manualized outreach for you and do that thing. So when we talk about hiring BDR, SDR, what are we in sales, right? What are we looking at as compensation requirements for the USA versus Latin America, for example, right? Or international remote reps. So if we're talking about a relatively tight budget, so let's say you spend X on email marketing and now you got to get a BDR, SDR to move leads to you, or you need a dedicated BDR to do cold outreach to generate leads and appointments for you. What does that look like? What do you need to spend? So in the United States, if they can be remote, you have an endless supply of talent. So then you have, to a certain extent, leverage as a business, right? So there you can look at a relatively low base and a very strong bonus commission structure. But in general, in the United States, reps with experience are going to be looking for a minimum $50,000, $60,000, $75,000 a year base guarantee, right? Can you get reps for $2,000-3,000 a month, for example, plus a really aggressive bonus commission structure? Yes, you can, but it's harder. It trims down the talent pool, of course. In Latin America, for example, though, if let's say you're really constrained by budget, you're looking at reps needing 1,000, 1,250, maybe 1,500 a month base in guarantee. We recruit from Mexico all the way to Argentina, Dominican Republic, South Africa, Philippines, Malaysia, Singapore. Those reps are going to be a lot more expensive or a lot less expensive, right? So that's something you can take into consideration. All right. For business development success, and I talk about this at length in another video, remember that you're going to need these components, right? So you've got to have the right you got to have the right rep. They've got to qualify from an assessment standpoint, a psychometric assessment. If they don't qualify on traits for business development, they're not worth hiring. They're not even worth looking at, right? So our qualifier for any sales or business development rep, and there are different dot patterns that we are looking for different types of sales roles, they have to match that. And this is particularly crucial if the rep needs to do business development or sales development, because if they are not wired for it, they will not do it. They will not do cold outreach successfully. They're going to get tired of it. They're going to be mentally exhausted by it, and they're going to get frustrated, and they're going to look for another job. Okay, so it is very, very important that the dots line up. Okay. Second thing, very quickly, and again, this is in another video at length, KUBE, knowledge, understanding, belief, emotion. You got to have the rep have emotion when they get on the day-to-day and on the calls. That starts with training on your products and services very thoroughly. It is not enough just to give them a script and a list and say, go get it. It's not going to work these days. They've got to be trained. They got to feel it. They got to believe, right? Knowledge leads to understanding, which leads to belief, which then turns into emotion on the day-to-day work and on the calls. You need that for the rep to be successful. And then finally, they need a honed process. They got to have a process to follow, right? Where do they keep the data? How do they keep track of the data? Whether it's CRM, Airtable, Smartsheet, Google Sheets, whatever the case is, they've got to have a process to follow to identify, keep track of everything, identify decision maker, gather intel, and then what do they have to do to generate a lead for you or an appointment for you? They've got to have a process to follow, know who to call back when, and keep track of everything, right? Very, very important for a rep to be successful, especially on the cold outreach side. All right, so that's really important. If you need, again, if we're doing email on the front end, then you get an SDR, have them follow up with leads, drive them to you for calls, appointments, right? If it's a short list, then you want a rep doing business development. It could be a rep in the United States. It could be a rep from Latin America, for example, an international rep, whatever works for your budget. At the end of the day, that's how you build that, okay? Next step is, remember, we are scaling the marketing and lead generation first at all times. Again, if we're working within a budget, right? If you have the budget to be able to hire an entire United States sales team that's going to do their own prospecting, boots on the ground, this is not what we're referring to here, right? We're talking about how do you build it from scratch at the lowest cost possible and then replicate it in a system where you're working within a constrained budget, okay? So now you have to scale your marketing and outreach first. You've got to be able to fill a sales schedule. So if you're one of the principals and you're the primary sales rep to start, I want your schedule filled. And if you have other responsibilities and can only do 1, 2, 3 calls a day, that's fine. Once your marketing and your process gets your schedule filled, now it's time to keep expanding that marketing and that outreach and add a salesperson, right? Now it's time to add sales. So you build leads and appointments first, and then you fill with sales to take on those leads and appointments, not the other way around. We don't hire salespeople to increase sales. We increase marketing and business development to increase sales, and we only hire sales reps to take on those appointments, okay? And ultimately, now we replicate it. So every single time you can fill the schedule of a dedicated salesperson, now you're on to your first hire, your second hire, you fill that salesperson's schedule, and they may have a customer base that they have built off of all of that lead generation and that business development. Now when they're full with customers and or appointments, now you hire a next salesperson, and then you increase again your marketing and your business development. and then you add another rep. And that's how you continue to build this from scratch if you are looking to build a B2B company. Okay, hopefully that helps you. If you have any questions, reach out to us, kevinmdowney.com. Glad to help you. We offer consulting program, obviously, recruiting and training of business and sales development reps, and then of course email marketing. We can send 50,000 emails a month for you. Okay, all right, really appreciate you being here. Thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.